All right, welcome. We're here with Kevin Price, CEO of North Carolina Minority Economic Development Institute, better known as the Institute. Welcome, Kevin. And Natalie Williams, Executive Director of the Women's Business Center in Charlotte. Thank you both for joining the Alliance for this Zoom call today. I really appreciate it. Let's start with some baselines and do some further introductions. Kevin, I'll turn it to you to talk about yourself just briefly and what is the Institute?
Well, thanks, Keva, and I appreciate you having us on today. Both Natalie and I are excited about this and glad to share information with you and listeners and viewers today. But a little about me, I am a supply diversity professional by way of a banker, by way of a community development practitioner, by way of a military veteran. That's a mouthful.
That's a lot of by ways, man.
But for the last 14 years, I've spent my career working with Novant Health and leading their supply diversity initiative. And recently took the helm as the new president CEO of the Institute for Minority Economic Development.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Williams. By all means, please.
Okay, my name is Natalie Williams, and I am the Executive Director of the Women's Business Center of Charlotte. The Women's Business Center has been in existence for approximately 4 years. We started back in 2016 as an RFP for the SBA. And my hosting agency is where my new president and CEO is now, which is the North Carolina Institute of Minority Economic Development, which is in Durham, North Carolina. We happen to be located here in the Charlotte region. And I come to you by way of New Jersey, by way of council, by way of corporate.
We would never know that. Well, and Natalie, you said something interesting, that the Institute is your hosting agency. Kevin or Nat, what does that mean?
So there are about 100 or so women business centers throughout the US of A. Many of us are housed within a nonprofit organization. So when I refer to the Institute as my hosting agency, it is the organization that provides our administrative back-end and most of our compliance functionalities.
Wonderful, wonderful, great partnership. And Kevin, the Institute, what's the footprint that the NC-IMED covers? Is it all of North Carolina or just parts?
Just to give a little background about the Institute itself. So the Institute, Keva, has been in existence since 1986. So it was created by Andrea Harris, who is well known throughout the state and the region and the country as being an advocate for minority issues. And the Institute mirrors that same identity of being an advocate, a catalyst for minority issues, whether it is around housing, policy, or finance, or any number of issues. But we tend to focus on those issues that impact minority communities.
Excellent.
And our role is really to build the asset base of minority communities. So we like to consider ourselves as trusted advisors to corporations, small businesses and their development, particularly minority businesses, government organizations and their growth along diversity and inclusion, and other smaller community organizations who are out doing this work.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And let's pay homage to Ms. Harris, because she is indeed the dean, shall we say.
So you asked me a moment ago about our footprint.
Yeah.
We are primarily in North Carolina, headquartered in Durham, to Natalie's point. We have organizations that are attached to us, like the Women's Business Center in Charlotte. We have another one in Durham that is the Women's Business Center of North Carolina. We have another affiliate group with us, the Small Business Transportation Resource Center, which is seated in Durham, but we have team members in the DC Maryland area. So we're covering North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, and the DC area.
That's great. I'm sure a lot of people did not know that. So that's important information to share. I want to transfer over to you all just recently, in light of this major pandemic here with COVID-19, did a really interesting survey, particularly around small, diverse businesses. And we're going to talk in depth about kind of what you found out of that. But what I also found unique, Kevin, was the partners that you aligned with to pull that together. Talk a little bit about the partners that were part of this whole COVID-19 survey that you just completed.
So let me share the screen with you a moment, because I think it's helpful for your viewers to see what we're talking about.
Great. And you can just go right ahead to talking about the survey, Kevin, since you got that up.
So as I pull up the survey, this was really, the background of this was I started March the 9th. And starting March the 9th, one of the first things I noticed was we have to address the impact of COVID-19 on small and diverse businesses. Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
And so as we looked at how this particular issue, there were a couple that came out. It was important that we had a cross-section of community organizations that worked with us to identify just what the issues were that were impacting small and diverse businesses. So I pulled together a coalition of organizations: the Carolinas Virginia Minority Supply Development Council, Latin American Chamber, the Hispanic Contractors, the North Carolina Veteran Business Association, Disability In for the disabled-owned businesses, LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the Urban League, Black Business Inc. in Winston-Salem, and various small, diverse businesses across the state, as well as other community partners, to really address several things. We wanted to survey small businesses across the state and get some idea of what they were dealing with. You know, oftentimes for some organizations, it's easy to think you know what people want or need versus asking them what they want and need. So it was important for us to ask and not assume. So that was the primary purpose of the survey, and really understand how COVID-19 is impacting them. And then after we understood some of those issues, it was important for us to educate the community on those issues and identify where resources are to help the community. And then we have to do something about it. So those are the coalition partners who helped with the survey.
Great. Thank you. Well, let's go ahead and go into the findings and the impact of the survey and kind of what we see going forward.
So this page is a synopsis of the results of the survey. And I'm going to start with the industries that were impacted, because I was on a call last week where we were talking about small businesses in general and the impact of COVID-19 on them. And what was fascinating was small businesses in general, if you looked at the industry that's being most impacted, it was the hospitality industry. However, if you were to drill down and look at minority businesses and which industry is being impacted the hardest, it is the professional services industry, which is a distinct difference, because oftentimes the professional services means that I am selling intellectual capital. I am a consultant, or I'm supporting a corporation, which is a much lower barrier to entry in terms of getting in that space than owning the bricks and mortar of a hotel or something along those lines. So it made sense that from an industry perspective, that's where we would see the bulk of those minority businesses.
Fascinating.
And
let me switch over to Natalie, right? Switch over to Natalie right quick. Natalie, what do you see from the Women's Business Center on the ground in Charlotte? Does this connect with kind of what your experience has been and what you're seeing so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So to Kevin's point, it is, the really diverse small businesses that are having a very difficult time at this particular time. A lot of them are solopreneurs, sole entrepreneurs, and part of their struggle is their financial makeup, not having the right information in place at this point to help them move and navigate through the lending opportunities that are out there right now. So, we're working hard to try to make sure that they have what they need so that they can get what they need as far as the PPP or the EIDL, give it your understanding about really what that is. So to his point, it is interesting to see this diagram here to show, what industry is really suffering the hardest.
Fascinating. And you said something also really interesting, just helping folks navigate through all of the stuff that you have to get through. Can either of you talk a little bit about how your organizations are positioned to do that?
So we're positioning, because we are, of course, we're funded by the SBA, but what we're doing is that we are reaching out to our beautiful resource partners. As a matter of fact, today we have a session with two CPAs to talk through managing your financing through this COVID period. It's not clearly clear to everyone about how the money comes available, how long you can use those dollars, and what you need to submit, especially as an individual contractor or a solopreneur. So we're going to be, I've done a live Instagram on that, going into detail the different pockets of money that is available. So we are working with our partners to make sure we get that information out. Using this forum with you is one of the other ways that we have that, and thank Kevin for this wonderful this survey, because it is really showing us exactly where we need to kind of like focus our efforts at, not just on financing, but also for sustainability, because that's a big key for us at the Women's Business Center: management and sustainability.
And just to piggyback on that, Keva, what's important for your listeners to understand is the banks this week will begin submitting their requests for COVID resources, COVID-19 resources. And what many banks have decided to do is focus on their particular customer base first as a priority. So not only are they preparing, if they're not ready already, they're close to being ready to start submitting those requests, but it will be their customer base that they'll focus on first. So it'll be important for them to be ready when the bank is ready. And that's where the Women's Business Centers come into play, because we can help those small businesses prepare for their banker. So once they get in front of them, they're ready to submit and receive funding.
Yep, getting ready. That's so critical to all of this, is being ahead of the game as much as you can, and that's important. Kevin, go ahead and talk some more about what you found and the insights gained out of the survey.
So another important distinction we found was many of your viewers and listeners have been seeing the federal government, particularly through the SBA, talk about their target audience that they're trying to address. And the target audience from the federal government's perspective is businesses with 500 employees or less. And we said, wow, 500 employees, that's a big company. That's not what most people would consider a small business. So we said, we think a small business is more like 50 employees or less. So that was the assumption, again, back to that assumption that we had, was let's focus on 50 businesses or less. So when we conducted the survey, one of the questions we asked was, well, how many employees do you have? And what we found was 90% of those who responded had fewer than 10 employees. So we were way off the mark, and that means that the federal government is even further off the mark of who is really being impacted most by this crisis. So it was important for us to think through that and understand the resources we provide should be tailored more to that very small business.
Important distinction.
Absolutely. So we also realized that 50%, actually better than 50% of the businesses that responded had been in business for over 55 years. So these were well-established companies. These weren't startups. These companies were a part of the community. And so how do we address those that have a stake in the community, that have been in the community for some time, and we know have some employees? 62% of them have experienced some loss in revenue, up to 50%. So half of their revenue has been impacted as a result of COVID-19. That's significant. Mm-hmm. Now, the flip side of that is most of them are still operational and have not even laid off anyone yet. Mm. Wow. Now, that was as of 2 weeks ago. We're now 2 weeks from when we completed the survey. So, you know, anytime you do a survey, it's almost dated as soon as it comes out on print.
Yep.
So that could have changed by now. But it was very important for us to understand that aspect of it as well, that these are companies that are still trying to hold on to their employees and remain solvent at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that last bullet up there, which is around 10 or 11 o'clock, shows that a third could operate for another 30 days or so before something significant happens, like they go out of business or start laying people off.
Wow, wow.
Keep in mind,
so, Kevin, when you I'm sorry, how large a pool, how many respondents responded to your survey?
468 in 3 days.
In 3 days?
In 3 days.
Wow, wow. Now, will you go back and do another survey at some point with this similar population, do it again?
We absolutely do plan to do that because it's important for us to follow up with them and make sure real time we're able to educate elected officials, foundations that are preparing for emergency grant and loan funds, as well as municipalities and corporations on just what's happening real time as much as possible. So we do plan to do that.
Thank you. And please let us know when that's ready. We'd love to, again, continue to help share the great work that you're doing. Well, now talk a little bit about kind of, so based on these insights, what were your takeaways or recommendations or suggestions, and to whom are you suggesting those things?
So that last one in the bottom right, last graph in the bottom right talks about one of the recommendations from the small businesses was they're seeing a lot of resources that are tailored toward loans. Mm-hmm. And for many of them, what these small businesses are realizing very quickly is a loan is nice and we appreciate that, but this is revenue that is lost. It's not revenue that I'm going to be able to make up. It's not coming back. It's gone. So relying on just loans is not going to work for many companies. So it was important that we also look at grant funding and make sure that's a part of the mix as well. So that's what you see there. But there were 6 distinct recommendations that came out of the survey. The first one was making sure that the construction industry was considered an essential service or industry. And when you think about it, in many cases, construction workers are outside and they have protective gear. So it made sense that we look at the construction industry, and it's a major driver of our economy. So it was important for us to keep that segment moving along. Also was encourage municipalities to provide water and basically utilities in general to both residential and business customers. Now, what we were hearing at the Institute was many mayors across the state have said, we're going to keep the water on for our residential citizens, but they exempted small businesses. And as you know, if you're a small restaurant, we've already said that you can't have dine-in service, so you are now relegated to dine-in and to takeout and delivery. So I at least can keep my business moving along with takeout and delivery, but I can't keep my business functional with no water. So it was important for us to address utilities for both residential and businesses. And then the third one was applauding those corporations that are responding and doing something right. So Duke Energy said, no, we absolutely plan to keep the electricity on for residential and business customers. It's important that we support both, and we think that's worth applauding. Fourth was launching a campaign around buying small, buying local, and I would add a third component, and that's buying diverse. So often, people in the community are now starting to see we can all play a role in supporting those local small businesses within our community. We think it should be tailored around some type of campaign of buying small and buying local. And part of our website will address a way to do that in an easy, seamless way. So we're building out a marketplace webpage of our website that you can go in and you can identify those small businesses within your community that you want to buy something from. And I would encourage citizens to buy something from a small business, even if it's a gift certificate that helps them with cash flow and you get the product later. That's still helpful in terms of helping that small business get past cash flow today. And then we mentioned providing more grants versus loans. And then the last one was what corporations can do to be good partners. So many corporations have supply chains that include small businesses. We've suggested that for those corporations, maybe you consider tweaking your payment terms, just a little bit. So for many corporations, their payment terms, generally speaking, are net 30, meaning I'm going to pay you in 30 days. Some 45, some 60 days before you get paid or longer. And what we're suggesting is let's consider shortening that window to a net 15 or net 7 if it's possible for your corporation, just so we get more revenue into the hands of those small businesses soon. And then the other is waiving late fees that you may attach to someone who owes you money, understanding that everyone's revenue is impacted, but particularly small businesses. And one way we can support them is waiving those late fees.
Yeah. Kevin, particularly the net 15, we know cash is king. And some of the best investment you can have is actually cash in your door. And I think we've seen from some work that we did a few years back where one major corporation just made we can do that. That's not a stretch. We can do that. And it made such a tremendous difference in those suppliers. So really love that. And, we talk a lot about economic opportunity. And I always subscribe, there is no opportunity without the economic. Or no economic opportunity without the economic. And small business, diverse business, that's where it begins. Because think of all those people who are still employed, that 70% that are still employing people right now. And those are families and households that those dollars are critical for. So well done. Let me ask you, what kind of response have you gotten to the recommendations that you provided?
Well, we've seen, Keva, some, actually I've been encouraged by the responses we've gotten so far. We've made great headway toward the utilities from the perspective of Duke Energy. They responded right away and jumped on it, and they've already made that commitment. We're starting to see some mayors take a look at the residential versus the business customers. The challenge that I'm hearing from a business perspective, though, is that many municipalities, because they may have bond financing in place, they still are also dealing with their own revenue to make sure they can pay their bonds and secure or safeguard their bond rating. So there's so many nuances to this to get this right. But the one I'm very encouraged by right now is everyone is in this triage phase of let's take care of keeping the businesses alive. And what I'm suggesting is someone now needs to start thinking about not only keeping them alive, but how do we get them to the next level, get them back on their feet. That's the post-triage period. And I think the post-triage has to include some type of buy small, buy local campaign that is nationwide, and North Carolina should lead that effort. to show that we're going to take care of our folks first and make sure those small businesses within our community, which there's over 900 of them, by the way, we should be able to do something to support them and save them.
Well, again, I applaud you for this. And, one of the things that certainly we three have talked about over time is really just the whole supply chain. And that is a way, certainly from the largest corporation down to the smallest, to look for where those opportunities exist to buy local. And I just think I'm hopeful that out of this crisis comes innovation. They say necessity is the mother of invention. Well, here we are. And what an opportunity for us to do some great things for all our businesses, particularly those that are the most fragile in our economy, because they are just as critical. Well, this is exceptional. We're going to wrap up here in a minute with any final thoughts. But Natalie, I wanted to make sure that people knew where to find you here locally. And so you just share briefly kind of your contact and how to reach you.
Sure. So they can reach us on various formats. They can call our office because we still have the capacity to answer our office phones while we're working remotely, 704-509-5884. Our website is theinstitutenc.org/WBCC Charlotte. They also can find a host of the classes that we provide, Keva, about 100 classes throughout the year. And that's Linktree, linktr.ee/WBC Charlotte.
Great. Kevin?
Well, Natalie is a great resource for Charlotte. So I would encourage everyone, call Natalie, don't call me. I'm going to tell you to call Natalie. She's just a wonderful gentleman.
That's what I usually say.
I'm just excited to have her and her team in place in the Charlotte market to support the community of Charlotte. And Natalie, how many counties are you representing around Charlotte? 12 counties?
I represent 12, Mecklenburg being the largest. But yes, we do 12 counties.
Yeah, and Natalie and I.
We're here as a resource. The Institute is a resource statewide, but specifically in the Charlotte market, we can support you.
I've talked about, and we're going to some more partnership down the road between the Alliance and the great work that she's leading. So now we have even more reason to make that happen. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I did want to say something about Kevin when he talked about keeping businesses alive, and that's where we're trying to head to, making sure that we are working with small businesses so that they can have the sustainability. Those numbers are really critically important to know that there are so many of them 30 days out to their doors closing. So we want them to be able to manage and sustain beyond, a 6-month to 12-month period. So we're working hard, coming together. The Institute is providing resources. The Women's Business Center will be doing that and working really hard on developing things so that we can keep those businesses alive.
Wonderful. Kevin, any last thoughts?
Well, look, my last thought to those who are listening and watching is don't panic. I mentioned this last week on a call that it's important for you to know that there are resources out there, there are organizations that are out there ready and willing to help you and support you. The Women's Business Center of Charlotte is certainly one of those. If you are beyond those 12 counties in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area, the Institute can help you beyond that as well. So just reach out to us as a resource. We have a webpage that has numerous resources available on it, as well as community partners, those that I mentioned earlier that help with the survey, who also have resources available as well. So we're a resource for the state of North Carolina.
Wonderful. Well, Kevin Price, CEO of North Carolina Institute of Minority Economic Development, and Natalie Williams, Executive Director of the Women's Business Center of Charlotte. Thank you, Juan, for your friendship and your partnership over these years. It means a lot during this season when you have trusted allies to work with. And I thank you both for that and look forward to the next time that we can keep us posted on what we can do to help you lift our communities during this time, and stay healthy.
Yes, thank you,
You as
Keva.
well.